Hi, everybody. I want to talk about America's go back to work strategy. We don't have one. It's gone. Today is Monday. What is it? The March 30. It's the day after President Trump's extending the guidelines to the end of April. We have another month of this, and I've been trying to digest it and figure out what's going on. And I think I know. I have a hypothesis, and it involves things that I'm not an expert in, but hopefully it illustrates for you a way of thinking about it. And if that helps you, great. So, some of my assumptions, some of my things may be wrong, but try to look for the kind of pattern of thinking. And so, when Trump put in place the Easter deadline, and I did a video on that, so you can check it out. I thought that was a good thing. For me, my background in engineering, product development, business, executive leadership, complex problem solving, how you mobilize a team, empower people, and get from point A to point B in a way that nobody could envision possible. That's what I saw happening with that deadline. And I was a little frustrated the media didn't catch it, but what does that mean? What I saw last week were signs of this go back to work strategy starting to play out. And what it looks like, or what it looked like, was taking elements from the herd immunity strategy as opposed to the stay-at-home strategy that we have now. Real quick recap, the two curves. You have the steep curve, high and fast, overwhelms healthcare. Flatten the curve, doesn't overwhelm healthcare ideally, but much longer. And so two camps are emerging. The economy is very, very important. If you don't know that by now, please think about it. The economy is very, very important. This is not a one-sided issue. This is not a binary issue where you pick one or the other. They're both very important. And the herd immunity strategy favors the economy more. The idea, let's run the curve, let's run it quickly, but it also takes elements from the stay-at-home strategy and says, let's protect the most vulnerable people, the high-risk people. We can protect them. So, what happened last week? Some of the things that I heard, saw in the news. Talks of high-risk people, folks in the older age bracket with certain health problems, them wearing masks when we go back to work. We heard about, Trump talked about quarantining, if you will, certain states where the hotspots are so that people don't go there or come out of there. So it's taking exactly what we're doing on a family level of stay at home and applying it on a regional level, a city level or something like that. We saw advances in the testing, more rapid testing. Some were saying 45 minutes. Yeah, I don't know how close we are. But you can see all these things kind of unfolding for us in a way that says, okay, we can go back to work, we can protect the older people, we can test ourselves to try to limit how fast the virus spreads, even though we're exposing to one. And of course, we have all the hygiene and the distancing, the new normal, if you will. And one of the, where that makes sense and where that's a good thing that maybe most people haven't thought about it. This crisis is unique to our country in that it affects the entire country. In the past, so we've seen some things happening that maybe kind of upsets people a little bit. That is where New York needs more ventilators. The governor of New York is just pleading, begging for more ventilators and resources. In the past, if there was a hurricane or wildfires or whatever, it was limited to an area, and people and resources from other states were mobilized. And we saw this great, we're proud of America, how everybody pulls together and helps out. And right now we're trying to deal with this. Well, why isn't anyone helping anyone else? Well, here's the problem. If Pennsylvania takes their resources and gives it to New York, now Pennsylvania is unable to care for their own people. So the governor of New York, he's tasked with taking care of New York. Obviously, we all care about everybody. We care about the country. But his specific role is for the people of New York. And the governor of Pennsylvania has to be responsible and fulfill his role of protecting the interests and the needs of Pennsylvania. So we don't have the ability to share resources across borders like we have. So if we were to embrace a go back to work strategy that involved some herd immunity and a combination of herd immunity and isolation, then that would allow us to mobilize more resources to those hotspots. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense. But what else did we see happen last week? We saw Trump quickly back off of his request for quarantine, or his strong statement towards quarantine, into a more kind of, guideline, a recommendation. We saw between the governor of Rhode Island saying that they weren't going to allow people to come from New York into their state, and we saw the governor of New York, Cuomo, say, well, this is discrimination, you can't do this, this is terrible, this is un-American, stop that. But if you think about it, one state isolating from another, or a city, it's no different than what we're doing on a family level. So, set aside principles, okay, we'll talk about that more, but just on a practical level, it's really the same thing. So, I think, and then Sunday, when Trump said, we're extending the guidelines to the end of April, and only when the question and answer came did he say that, well, forget Easter, listen to everyone, we're going to be peaking in Easter, this and that, we can't essentially do anything. And people were confused about that. The guidelines are not shutting anything down. The federal government is not shutting anything down. It's the governors of the states that are closing everything. And here's where I think I'm all about problem solving. I want to know what our government is doing. I want to see us come together. I want to see us leverage all the smartest minds and most talented, committed people in our country to come together and fix this problem. But we can't. And we can't fix it because of separation of powers, and because of states' rights, and because of our Constitution. Now, I don't want to throw all that out the window. Not even suggesting that at all. But let's look at it, okay? We tend to think, it's sort of a default mode among people to think that the president can do anything that he wants. We often hear him, he's the most powerful man in the world, and he can, in reality, he's really not. Because the way our Constitution is set up, there's a limited power of the federal government. There's limited powers of the president. There's limited everything, even Congress. And, even calling them leaders, those are our leaders, okay? Even that's wrong, because they're our representatives. They're all, especially the federal government, they're elected to represent their people, their state, their district, and the needs and interests of those people at the federal level. The primary job of the president is to be the chief executive of the military, we call it commander-in-chief, the chief executive of the federal government, and the chief law enforcer. So you have these federal government agencies, these functions of our federal government that somebody has to be in charge of. That's the president, and it's similar to the governor of a state. So the president of the United States cannot quarantine a state. He cannot tell the states what to do. Now, maybe, invoking martial law or something like that. I don't know. Again, I'm not a legal expert. But what I think happened here is, and it's disheartening to me, because I believe we went from a committed, active, come together, let's fix this, let's do this as Americans, and we got this. I mean, that was how I felt with the Easter deadline. After yesterday, and considering what's going on, I feel like our new strategy is just to sit and wait because everybody's hands are tied. That's where we are. Nobody really, nothing is more frustrating for me than seeing a problem, feeling like there's so many things we can do to solve the problem, and nobody's doing it. Nobody's doing it. We're just, and again, I affirm our Constitution. I affirm our individual rights. I affirm states' rights and limited powers and things like that. But mark my words, this is going to be, in the aftermath of this virus, this will be the topic of our time. I am no way, shape, or form a fan of the communist government of China. But the Chinese government will very easily be able to say, look what we did. We closed off a city, we took harsh measures, and it was terrible, and it sucked for a period of time for a certain amount of our people, but now we're going back to normal, and the time was compressed significantly. Look at those people in the United States. Their hands are tied. They can't do anything. That's a weak form of government. That's what they would say. And if you set your biases aside, they kind of have a point, okay? Now, again, I don't want to be China. I don't want to have a communist government, an authoritarian, all-powerful government, because I think the downside is way worse than the advantage in this particular situation. So what is going to happen with our government going forward? What are we going to be doing? You saw all this Department of Homeland Security, Patriot Act, and all these things formed after 9/11. What is it going to look like after this? Well, a friend of mine pointed out the hundreds of millions of dollars given to the CDC, and it was stated as for data collection. And South Korea did not, great job with the testing, okay? But it was not just testing. It was surveillance of their people, tracking people's, movements and things like that. So their testing was very, very targeted. At the time, everyone was saying how great a job they did at beating this. They had 248,000 tests. 200,000 of those tests were targeted and given to one group of people, one very large church. So, if you look into it and you look at the kinds of surveillance and privacy, issues that they went through and they utilized in South Korea, not sure we want to go there either. So what can we do? I'm not going to leave this on a negative, okay? But the federal government, our federal government, does not have the power to do this go back to work strategy. Great strategy, but we have super smart people, super talented people at the federal level, and because of the way our government's set up, they can't help us. They can help us, but they can't give us a strategy. We can't take a problem and say through human ingenuity, through hard work and problem solving, we're going to make this problem go away faster. We're going to manage it, handle it, fix it with technology. We can't do that. All we can do now is wait. But what can the federal government do? Our federal government, I believe, going forward, it can be a resource to the states. We're going to have to look at options, ways of managing a pandemic and a problem like this without quarantining, without, unless the governors can come together and make some agreement. I just don't see that happening. So, we have to look at our what can our federal government provide as a resource. And right now, the resource that they're providing, and most of it, I believe, is the CDC guiding the governors. So if you listen to your governors, they're saying, we're following the CDC, we're following the CDC. Here's the problem. Okay, the CDC, the role of the CDC is infectious diseases control. Okay, that's their role. They're not involved in the economy at all. So all of the guidance, all of the information that the governors are using have one thing in mind, and that is preventing the virus from spreading. 100%, nothing else matters. And the end result is that we stay home, we separate, and we wait it out. And that could be weeks, that could be months. Nobody can tell you, and it doesn't matter. Because as long as that, in the eyes of someone in the infectious control medical community, as long as we never rise above that, critical threshold, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that 80–90% of the people that are stuck in the home, if they did get the virus, would never go to the hospital anyway. Doesn't matter, okay? It's overkill in a lot of ways. You can argue that this is overkill on the public health, and the price that we pay is on the economic side. So, data collection. I mean, I really hope we don't get into another, privacy rights. It's always a slippery slope. But I believe that's why the CDC, they're going to invest their money in providing all this sort of information that they can provide to the governors, to the people that have to make the tough decisions, so we can say, here's where it's going to break. Here's where the outbreak is going to happen. Here's another lesson of this. A lot of critics said we screwed up as a nation, our government screwed up, our president screwed up because we didn't do enough testing fast enough. But look at where we are now. We have testing, we have hotspots, and we can't do a damn thing about it. So what good was that testing going to do a month ago, 2 months ago? I mean, nationwide lockdown sooner? So if we're not able to be proactive and work the problem and make it go away sooner, now we weren't in any condition, any situation to do it back then. So this has to be fixed. This has to be, it may not be able to be fixed. It has to be improved in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not willing to sacrifice individual rights to do it. But we need to pay close attention to it. Because again, the federal government's role is going to be in data collection, providing tools and information to the states to let them make their decisions about things like lockdowns, quarantines. Just to reiterate, okay, every one of you in your homes right now is being told and expected to seal your border. You're not allowed out of your house. You're not allowed to let someone else come into your house. If you go out in public, you're not allowed to associate with other people. Okay? That's your responsibility. We're enforcing that responsibility. We're being told to do it. We're applying social pressure. We're doing all that. But our governors won't do it. Our states won't do it. Our federal government can't do it. So that's where we are, okay? I mean, it's a balance, okay? It's a balance. As soon as you tell some city you can't leave your city or you can't leave this area because of, you start to look more like China. And I get that. But what do we look like now? What do we look like now? We can't go to school. We can't go to work. So, by default, they've shut down all of our places of employment. Oh, there's not a military force on your street telling you to stay in your house, but you've got nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. It's all shut down. So, I no longer look at the problem solving from our federal government saying, yes, we can do this, we can fix this. This has pushed me much further into the herd immunity camp. And I think we as people need to make our voices heard. I think we need to start to talk to our governors, our state leaders, and start making some demands about getting our economy turned back on. It's not an either or. Okay, I'm not saying throw out the whole curve and forget about the hospital, but don't forget, okay, this is not about how many people may die. This is not about comparing the flu to the virus, to heart disease, to all this other thing. This is about one thing, Okay, it's about the capacity of our healthcare system to treat these people with severe breathing problems. That's all that it's about. Okay, and that's important. Okay, imagine what it would look like if you had 1,000 people go to your hospital with family members who can't breathe and they can't get in and they can't get treated. Okay, huge problem. So I'm not minimizing it, but just to keep things in perspective, that's the problem we need to solve. There's a lot of things we can do to solve that problem if that's how we acknowledge it. You know, I mean, to triaging and, you know, I mean, not a doctor, okay? But the way I understand it, breathing difficulty, I believe they're going to check your pulse oximeter blood saturation level. If it's low, they're going to treat you with oxygen. If oxygen's not getting it up or it's too low, then you have to go on a ventilator. That's what I believe the strategy is. We could all have pulse oximeters in our homes. We could all have a oxygen concentrator in our homes. Okay, no, we don't want to self-treat. We want to use the doctors, this and that. But right now we're being told don't go to the hospital unless you're having breathing difficulty. Do not go to the hospital. And that's good advice. It's good guidelines. But people are working blind. They're scared. We're being told this is a very dangerous disease. So if you think you have it, you want to get checked out. Okay, so getting long enough. This helps me. Okay, thinking about these things, it gives me a sense of, I don't know, purpose, control. So I hope it helps you. I want to give a shout out to my friend James. I've upgraded. I've had the equipment to do this, but I hastily threw myself into creating videos, and he gave me some criticism today, and hopefully the quality of this audio and video is better. And also shout out to my friend Jess. She shared with me information yesterday about the you know, the funding going to the CDC for data collection and, you know, the potential issue with human rights. So, see, that helps me. That these people, these are actually people that I don't see very, I haven't seen for a long time in face-to-face, but, you know, we communicate online. There's some like-mindedness there, okay? Yeah, we're different in a lot of ways, but there's some like-mindedness. And, you know, that's helped me. It gives me some things to think about, some perspectives that I wouldn't have here in my own bubble, in my own home. So find that, you know, whatever like-mindedness you need. You want to talk to whatever you like to talk about, whatever helps you to deal with this, you know, reach out to people, whether it's through text or social media or a phone call. You know, it's just try to minimize the isolation aspect of being isolated. So, okay. That's all I have today, and be blessed. Talk to you soon.